All right, welcome to the Church Dropout Podcast. My name is Alan. I'm the host. Church Dropout is a podcast. We talk about issues, topics, and teachings related to faith, life, and culture in ways that are sometimes funny, sometimes serious, but always insightful. If you have not already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below. Keep the conversation moving forward. So, this weekend I had listened to a few things and then read a few articles, and there is something, in my opinion, that's far more sinister happening to Christianity in America. There's something that's just, sinister about how Christianity is being lived out, I guess, in America, or what Christians are valuing most in America right now. There's just something there, right? And as I read and observed and even talked with people and just even, dealing with the comments and some of the people in the comments, it seems like folks are more angry. It seems like Christians are just angry, right? Like people are just mad. And it's not so much even about the issues, it's the outrage as a result, right? And we're also seeing, a severe lack of compassion, right, and care, especially for anyone who thinks differently, right? It's just there's something that is going on, right? And I think it's evil and demonic. I think the church is right now being deceived. And I think the Christian faith in America is honestly being redefined into a religion that resembles what many Christians believe is the greatest threat, which is Islam. It's the same type of attitude is being given out, right? As these other faiths, and one of the things that makes Christianity different is how it sees the world, how it views the world, and how it chooses to live amongst others that are here. But it just seems like Christians are becoming more militant and more aggressive, with how we want to Christianize this country. It's no longer about the gospel. It's about Christianizing the nation. Everything is about, making the nation Christian. And it's not being said that way, but these two ideas are being tied together, right? We need to save. You're hearing a lot of talk now about we need to save Western civilization. Western civilization brought, the gospel, the good news to the world, and to which a lot of these things aren't true. Christianity is a Eastern religion. It grew in the Middle East, and many of the early church fathers were people who resided there. And so anyway, for the West to claim that it's, advanced Christianity in the way that many people say it does, I just think is false. And it's a part of the idea of American exceptionalism. And I think Christianity in America is being caught up into that. I feel like we're being led down a path that sees difference as a threat, right? I feel like we're heading down a path where, people who think differently are becoming a threat to society or to civilization, right? To the ultimate goal, right? It's no longer, people have different views and yet we still are able to come together. It's now, no, the opposition is seen as a threat, which is very interesting too, because what Donald Trump said at Charlie Kirk's funeral, when he said what he said about loving his opponents. He said, I hate my opponents. And that sentiment and that attitude, I think, is being pushed down into how Christians are choosing to live out their faith here in America to the point where, again, it's no longer about love or compassion or care, or it's now about force. I think we're being led down this path of anger, right? And I think that's the goal. I think in part the goal is to make people angry. It's to upset people, and make people appalled at what's going on, to get a reaction, and to push on that reaction in order to get what's needed, right? And I feel like this activity that's happening, I feel like we've traded empathy for rage. I just feel like Christians are just raging, and we've traded empathy for rage. Now, bigotry and discrimination, dissension, is all being thrown out the window, right? In the name of telling the truth, in the name of it's true, right? The how doesn't matter anymore, right? Only the what, right? It doesn't matter how we got to where we are. The only thing that matters is what, right? And so, wait a minute. What they're saying is hateful. What they're saying is hurtful. What they're saying is offensive. The question now that people are asking is it true though? And Christians are no longer worried about the how. They're worried only about the what. And it just reminds me of a passage in Romans, I think chapter 3, where it says, oh man, let me just pull it up so I don't mess it up. Should we? I keep wanting to say, should we go on sinning? That grace may abound, but that's not the one. It's Romans 3:8 says, "Why not say, as some slanderously claim that we say, let us do evil that good may result." Right? Their condemnation is just, let us do evil that good may result. Right. And I feel like this is what's happening. Right. It's Christians doing good. It's Christians, doing things that are evil while trying to do good. And let me say this, and I know Christians are going to say, like, what are we doing that's evil? Listen, when we refuse to love, when we refuse to love in the way that Jesus called us to love, that is evil. And I feel like we are only committed to the outcome, not committed to how we get there, right? And we see this all the time, especially when it comes to politics, right? Everything's about the policy. It's not about the people. It's about the policy. And this is why there's so many contradictions that I tried to point out in the other video, right? Where you have people who are for the unborn, but not for the born, right? And then you have, people who are for gun rights, right? And want to further guns but want to ignore the violence and say that they're for life on this end, but then, don't want to do anything about how that's actually affected. And I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying, like, these are where the contradictions come in, right? I mean, now we're even at the point where love and compassion as a Christian is seen as a weakness, right? Where online you'll look and you'll see, some, men operating in love, and people are saying that's not what men do, right? That's weak. It's becoming a cultural sin to be loving and compassionate, and that's seen as weakness, right? And this is why I say, like, they can never deal with Jesus. They can never deal with the person of Christ, right? This is why there's always a sidestep to Paul. Not that Paul wasn't compassionate or loving, but they want to focus on theology and doctrine, and not focus on doing theology or living theology and living that doctrine. We see those things exemplified in how Christ lived, right? And so now the things that Christianity was once marked by are now seen as a weakness, right? It's not seen as a strength, right? To me, listen, it takes far more strength to love people who are different than you than it is to put up a wall and say, we don't come in. Right. And I'm not talking about, I'm not talking about immigration. I'm talking about just, it's easier. It's harder to love people and it's easy to resist. There's no work in that. There's no work in that. You put up a billboard, you say, this is what we believe. And, and you don't have to deal with the people who don't believe those things. It's far more difficult to, to love people and to be in relationship with people who are different than you. And so for people to call love and compassion weak, think about it, for people to call love and compassion weak, I think are weak individuals who are choosing to be moved by their emotions and their feelings rather than by the move of the Spirit and displaying what Christ says Christians ought to display. Which also brings me to another thing, we don't see any fruit of the Spirit. Love, peace, patience, joy, self-control. Like this is what is, man, let me pull up this passage. Galatians 5. Let's pull up the whole chapter. Okay, so looking at verse 19, the acts, chapter 5, the acts of the flesh are obvious. Sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I want to warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. I see these things running rampant in Christian culture in America, right? Especially, dissension, discord, factions, idolatry, fits of rage, selfish ambition, all of these things, right? All of these things are running rampant, right? But he says this in verse 22, but the fruit of the Spirit, what the Spirit bears, what the Spirit grows in every believer, what should come as a result of being rooted in the Spirit of God is love, joy, peace, forbearance, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. There is no law against such things. You can't be punished. I told somebody, one of the listeners of this channel said to me, they were just like, listen, I'm with you, and they were just like, man, just be careful, not to embrace, a different theology, not to embrace the opposite, not to swing the pendulum to the other side. And I'm like, okay, I'm grateful for that. Like, yeah, absolutely. Right. I'm not embracing a prosperity gospel, but I'm also not embracing a poverty gospel. Right. The gospel is the gospel, and the scripture says Christians are to be generous and giving and loving and all of these things that are mentioned here. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is, I said this at the end. I said, man, but if I do have to err on a certain side, I rather err on the side of love and compassion. Like I rather be overly compassionate, overly loving, than to be on the other side where I'm not moved or acting at all. right? This is why there's no excuse for people to say things like, well, anyway, let me just go there. So he says, against these things, there is no law, right? Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh and the passions and the desires, since we live by the Spirit. Let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us keep walking in that. Keep in step with it. Let us not become conceited, provoking, and envying each other. So we're not seeing a whole lot of fruit of the Spirit, right? We're seeing a lot of the works of the flesh, right? And, like I said, a lot of these things are considered weak in this culture. They don't work within the American framework, right? I think that there's a specific goal to all of this. I do. I think there's a specific goal, as to why people are being pushed into anger. Why it seems as though there is no room for compromise, right? There is no room for conversation. If you think differently than this, then you are clearly on the other side. There's no more middle ground. And I'm not talking about middle ground like you live on middle ground, you're Jesus here. I'm talking about middle ground in terms of, here, we are approaching this from a different perspective. We have different views. Let's come together. Let's talk about it. What I'm saying is that no longer exists. They're polar opposites. And I think that is also continuing to push the rage that we're seeing, right? And I think that this is going somewhere, right? And I can't help, but think about like the Crusades, like where, violence was allowed and encouraged, even rewarded for defending a brand of Christianity, right? To the point where, as they are doing these things, they're yelling, God wills it, right? I feel like, that same sentiment is being pushed to Christians today. That same sentiment of, we need to do something about this. We need to do something about this, right? I feel like we're headed down that same path where force will be allowed to defend Christian values, and I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I don't think I am wrong here, right? I really believe, especially how the conversation about Islam and how that's progressing and picking up, it's becoming, it's not let the Lord deal with this. It's not vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. It's eye for an eye. That's kind of the talk, right? We're not going to allow them to take us over, and we'll do anything in our power to resist that. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't resist it. The question is how do we resist it? The question is how do Christians resist it? And so, I just feel like, again, that, this era of Christianity, I think, is problematic, and I think it's getting worse, right? And I think Christians are going to be forced at some point, people who claim to be within the community of Christ are going to be forced to choose a side, and, and and I think Christians will be persecuted, as a result, not by America, not by the elites. I think there'll be persecution from their own, and we already see it. We already see that there are Christians who are questioning the salvation of those who believe differently, who are, creating lists and calling people out, doing all types of stuff, stuff like that, and so anyway, I just wanted to kind of chop it up with you. There's something going on in Christianity today. There's something far more sinister than just, we believe in different things or we have a different vantage point. I think this deception is demonic, where Christians are being tricked out of position, and we're missing the call. We're now trying to fight in the spiritual realm with physical weapons, and it's starting to show. And the reason why I think it's starting to show is because of the animosity and the anger, the rage, the death of empathy and the rise of rage, and then seeing things like compassion and love and care, seeing those things be weaponized and be called weak. Man, what other alternative is there? Right? When the threat is pressing, what other alternative? If the alternative is not to love, not to show compassion, not to show grace, not to serve our enemies, if none of those things, if we don't do any of those things, all those things are weak, then what's left? The only thing left is to fight, right? The only thing left, the only alternative is to fight. And we should be concerned. And so anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. This is one I would love to hear your thoughts on. Am I crazy here? I could be off. I don't think I am, but I could be off. Are you feeling the same thing? Are you hearing the same type of conversations? When you hear the rhetoric that's being, things that are being talked about, what are you hearing? So drop a comment below. Keep the conversation moving forward. Thank you for tuning into the Church Dropout podcast. Talk soon. God bless.